I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost is with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we are going to be talking about Kamala Harris finally hitting some interviews. She did a really big podcast. I guess it's only second to really Joe Rogan, but it's like a sex kind of podcast where women talk about a bunch of dirty stuff, but it's Call Her Daddy. I've just seen some clips. I'm debating whether I want to torture myself throughout the whole thing. Perhaps I will, because it might make an interesting video, things I do for you guys, I guess. But we're going to talk about some things that are going viral. And Tim Walz also went on Fox. I doubt Kamala is going to be heading over there. But people are sounding the alarm. The internals are like toss up between them, but the betting markets has Trump ahead. And Elon Musk is really hitting the trail, putting some money behind this stuff. We'll have to see if Turning Point and Elon and if the kind of the things they're doing are going to lead up to a good get out the vote effort, because I think that's really where the Trump campaign are struggling. But Kamala Harris is overall just a really terrible candidate, and though Trump has done some things that have made him not so attractive, I guess, to many moderates and independents, Kamala Harris is still she's still, so we'll be talking about that. Also, it is October the 7th today, so it is the anniversary of the terrible attack in Israel, which just shined a light on how, besides the ugly act itself, shined an extraordinarily ugly light on the world itself. So I want to talk a bit about that, and also the FEMA response with the Hurricane Helene, and there's another one coming, and Mayorkas said that they don't have money, and the government is saying, oh no, we're giving out money, we're doing stuff for people. I'm seeing some people on like TikTok and other places saying that they applied and they're denied. And so it's just a lot of drama surrounding this, and overall we just are not ready to go to help these people. But anyway, before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream and run my website, all that good stuff, so you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. I do also ask that you guys check out different merch available at the store, blacktnews.com. We got the black tea mug for you guys. Check that out. We also got different t-shirts you guys can check out, different hoodies and so on. We got the goat hoodie, greatest of all time. So that the hoodies are pretty darn comfortable, by the way, and the t-shirts. But I do have those in different colors, and I do have them in t-shirts. You guys can check that out. I got the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For t-shirt and other stuff. I do have books you guys can check out. I got some posters and actual books on the wall over here, so you guys can check out. You can just search my name on Amazon. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, there should be a link in the description. It'll take you over to like an Amazon page that'll have my stuff there. So that's the easy way to find all my stuff. But go ahead and check it out. One of my books is, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion, which, Kamala Harris keeps saying things like, you don't have to uh, betray your values and support a woman's right to choose. And it's like, okay, well then what values do you have and what religion do you have that tells you that it's okay to kill children, you know? So that's really the question. And too many people think that being pro-choice, because hear it all the time, I'm personally pro-life but I'm pro-choice for other people. That's just being pro-choice. But people think that they're being I don't know, sitting on the sidelines and just letting everyone kind of decide. But what you are deciding and actively participating in and actively voting for is to take away rights from someone else, take away protections from someone else, and to grant immunity for people who would want to deliberately commit acts of violence against innocent parties. So if we're for imagine for a second, we're not talking about babies. Imagine there's a group of people and they want to murder black people. That's what they want to do. And you don't want to murder black people, but you're like, you know what? They're making a good case. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to do it, but they want to do it. So, and I wouldn't do it, and I don't want to hold myself responsible. But I would really like for them to be able to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that up for a vote. And I'm going to make it so that there will be no protection. So when these black people call the police and say, hey, these people are trying to kill me, no one will help them because it'll be totally legal. And when they actually commit the acts of violence, no one will stop them. There will be no repercussions for them if they do that. And I'm going to sit on the sidelines and think I had nothing to do with it. And that was totally their choice. That is actually what people are doing when they say that they are pro-choice. So, except, instead of talking about black people, we're talking about a good chunk of black people because disproportionately black babies are killed. In Michigan, it's more than half the babies killed in abortions are black. So people like that's an unrealistic proposition. Is it though? Is it though? So yeah, she's silly. We'll be talking about that topic because they talked about that topic. These people will do anything to kill babies, and the lies about Amber Thurman are so insane. And we'll keep going at it and debunking this garbage. But these people are so despicable. Last week we talked about how even CNN called out the Kamala Harris campaign for claiming that Donald Trump was going to have, and Tim Walz said this at the debate, that they were going to have the Project 2025 was going to make it so that they were going to keep a registry of pregnant women so they keep track of their miscarriages and all that other kind of stuff. So I guess they could track them down and be like, did you have this baby or not? And even CNN's fact checker, who does not like, it seems, to correct the record and obviously slants a particular way, but even he was like, I actually read Project 2025, so he's one of the rare people who've done so. And he said that's not even in Project 2025. It's like states do offer voluntary information about miscarriages and abortions and other stuff like that. And he's like, Minnesota offers that kind of information. They don't have a registry of pregnant women. But they do offer that information. Project 2025 just says it should be mandatory to offer that information. And why wouldn't you want information about pregnant women or if they're having miscarriages so we can track, like, oh my gosh, there's an uptick in this, there's an unnatural number, an unusually high number in this state, in that state versus this one. Is there something in, I don't know, in the water, dietary restrictions, what their medication, things we can track to I don't know, try to improve people's health. What So what they're even claiming that is a terrible thing that's in Project 2025 isn't even in Project 2025. And then they say that Project 2025 is Trump's agenda, and it's not even Trump's agenda. So it's just like an inception of lies. There's a lie inside of a lie inside of a lie inside of a lie. So that is the Harris campaign, and it's really sad, but it even goes further than that. They just can't stop doing evil and doing evil stuff, saying evil stuff. And there's so many things that you could like legitimately complain about the Trump campaign about, and things that he did, things that he said, especially like post presidency. but they just want to go full on Project 2025. I'm like, you must not think he's that bad. And by the way, I have a theory that Joe Biden must not think that Trump is that bad. I think he secretly wants Trump to win. I think he secretly wants Trump to win. So we'll touch on that today. Lots of things to get to. And I think I got through. I told you guys to go to my website. Make sure you guys are dropping in your emails so you get email updates when I send them out. And it's already October. So we are so close, man, to the end of the road. A reminder, the week of the election, I do have a book signing on that Sunday, the 3rd in Ann Arbor. And mine is the first set. I don't know if it's 10 to 12. Maybe it's 10 to 12 or it's 11 to 1. I think it might be 10 to 12, but I'll send out that information. And then that weekend on Friday, then Saturday, then Sunday, I will be at Motor City Comic Con and I will have a booth in Artist Alley. So if you're in the area, I recommend that you come and get a signed book. One of my many. I will have all 18 there, hopefully 19, but I don't know. I would really like to have my book bigger out. It's a children's book. My sister's been working on the illustrations, but you guys know that life really kicked us hard in the chest recently. So that just really kind of pressed pause on a lot of things. So if not, then hopefully by the end of the year, and I'll just keep you guys in the loop, obviously. So let's hop to it. So first things first, Kamala Harris is going on. She went on Call Her Daddy, which some people are like, oh my gosh, why'd she go on Call Her Daddy? Because it's a huge podcast. I think it's unbecoming of a presidential nominee because of the sorts of things that they talk about. I think like somewhere like a few episodes under hers or above hers or whatever, there's something about blowjobs. So that's the kind of show that it is. They just talk about all kinds of wild stuff. So I think it's unbecoming of a presidential nominee, perhaps maybe not this particular nominee if you're aware of her history. I have not watched the whole thing. But I doubt there's questions about some of that spicy stuff, like how she rose to power. Willie Brown was probably not mentioned. Her husband apparently slapping a woman, allegedly, but that was a story by I think Daily Mail that maybe broke that. But that story is more corroborated than Brett Kavanaugh assaulting Christy Blasey Ford, which Kamala Harris believe that before even hearing either one of their testimonies. So there's more corroboration on this particular story than with Kavanaugh. But we do know that he shipped the nanny and impregnated her. And I don't know what happened to the baby. We're assuming the baby's probably no longer with us. But that's the kind of dude she's with. Of course, that's not her per se. But just another pro-choice dudes doing not great stuff. That's why I have a shirt that says pro-choice men are sus, if anyone is ever curious, because there's just always kind of, not always, but a lot of times you'll see kind of garbage stuff like that, especially because Kamala Harris herself encourages men to speak up, to be pro-abortion, because she wants them to be able to escape responsibility if something happens. She literally pitched that to parents. She said, consider your sons, so that's the route that she was going. Like, you don't want them to have to be trapped and be responsible to their offspring, So Pete Buttigieg said the same thing basically too. So that's the route that they're going, degeneracy. So it's really kind of no surprise that she was on this program, especially because it has a lot of eyeballs on it. Trump has been going on podcasts with a lot of different eyeballs on it. The only podcast I think that's higher than Call Her Daddy is I believe Joe Rogan's show, and I don't know if I don't think Rogan's not anti-Trump, but he's not really pro-Trump, and I don't know how that would go anyway. So, but there's been plenty of advocates for Trump that's gone on that show, but she was on the show Call Her Daddy. So, there was a question about abortion on there, and some folks are calling out this silliness. So this is a small clip from it. I don't want to play a lot of things at a time with this because I don't know how easily that will get flagged on YouTube or even Facebook. But um, she asked this question, the host. I've never seen an episode. I don't even know if I've really seen just maybe tiny clips here or there on TikTok of the show. I just know it's very popular. And
I want to pose
oh,
this
sorry.
question.
Didn't mean to press play yet, but they're going to ask a question about abortion. Now, this is something that Kamala Harris has asked herself, and it's just really silly and easily debunkable.
I want to pose this question more to you and the Daddy Gang, but one of the biggest conversations in this year's election revolves around a woman's body.
Yep.
I want to take a moment, and can we try to think of any law that gives the government the power to make a decision?
I know what you're going to ask.
About a man's body. Let's
No.
just pause.
No.
Is there any law?
No.
It's
No.
I want to pose.
No, this isn't true. This isn't true. And there's already been a lot of TikToks and stuff today about this, and people have already mentioned it today. Like I was listening to Ben, and you already gave the answer I'm about to give you guys. But I've been saying this answer for a while, so I'm glad that people are jumping on my train. Because I've totally already said this, and it's been in my book and so on. But the obvious answer is the draft. And I use this particular example in my book. Actually, I went to my footnotes so I could go back and find the link to find this particular tweet. So not only do men have to register for the draft, the Selective Service put out this tweet some time ago that said, "Parents, if your son is an only son and the last male in your family to carry the family name, he is still required to register for SSS." Learn more about who needs to register at the website. So not only like how they set it up, if you are the one and only son, you would think that maybe they say someone needs to carry on the line or whatever. They're like, no, you have to do this. You have to go sign up your son so we can end your line and they can die fighting for their country. Now, we know that there hasn't actually been a draft in a while. We have historically had drafts. Of course, Vietnam, very famous drafts. People were dodging that. We had the draft in the Civil War, which was very fascinating. There was a big draft riot that broke out. And I actually wrote about that. One of my books, Song on the Devil's Lips, that was like the big climax, really, of the story. If you've ever seen Gangs of New York, that's included in that movie too. But people, we have a voluntary base, of folks who will go out and serve for our country. So we haven't had one in a while. Recruitment is down though, so I don't know if World War III breaks out with Kamala Harris at the helm, they might need to institute some kind of draft, and it's the men of this country who they will pick from that pool. It will be the men, because the men have been required to do this, and they are legally in trouble if they do not. So yes, there are laws that govern specifically men about what they have to do with their body, and not serve just 9 months. This is hey, you sign up, fight war, you can die for your country. So yes, there is something specifically that is geared toward men that the government says to do. But beyond that, Kamala Harris, Miss Empty Head, basically every single law on the books is about you being told that you can do specific things with your body, which applies to both sexes, granted, but men, for example, are told by the law, because they'll be punished if they go out and sexually assault someone, male or female, right? You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to use your body to enforce your will aggressively, violently, non-consensually upon someone else. Correct? You cannot use your body to go strangle someone to death. You cannot use your body to steal stuff from other folks. You cannot use your body to suffocate, starve, dismember, so on. If Lizzie Borden, was going to take an axe, use her body to just start hacking up people, that's obviously not allowed. So if those things aren't allowed, and if we wanted just like equal rights, how come a man cannot dismember his child, but a woman can go dismember her child? How come a man cannot starve his child to death, but a woman can go starve her child to death? How come a man cannot burn his child, but a woman can go burn her child? I don't think they really do saline stuff anymore, but that was one thing that people used to do. How come men can't to suffocate their children, but women can do that? Now, it's not all women. You have to be a pregnant woman, obviously, which Kamala and her ilk apparently believe some men can be pregnant, so they just call them pregnant people nowadays. But they believe that, they have a special right to do these things. So when people try to make it seem like abortion, if women don't have abortion, then they're somehow unequal to men and they're being picked on, that's not true. The pro-choice crowd are the ones asking for special rights. They're the ones asking for special rights. And so in one of my examples, I mentioned about violently aggressing upon someone and they don't have consent and stuff. And you could say, well, what about a woman? And what if she didn't consent to pregnancy? Pregnancy is a natural biological process that is, largely instigated when people consensually have sex. It can happen when someone doesn't mean to consensually do it, but that's again someone aggressively using their body in a manner that they're not supposed to be doing to you, so that party who did the aggression is obviously in the wrong. But when people come together and they procreate, someone might be procreated from it. Oh golly gee, yeah, that happens. And so if a baby is created, we just want the natural biological process to happen. We're not pro forced birth, where we actually want the natural process of birth to happen. The pro abortion, pro choice people are the ones who actually approve of forced birth, because abortion is forced birth to a dead baby. You can't stop, like, you're naturally going to give birth. That's just the exit from the canal. You're naturally carrying your child. You are naturally, giving them resources and like nutrients and oxygen from your blood and stuff. That's just all naturally happening. No one is making you do anything. A ban isn't even making you do anything. The ban is just saying if you do something, then there will be repercussions if you institute some kind of violence. That's what a ban does. It's not like someone still holds you down and makes you carry the baby. At the end of the day, you can still choose to do whatever you want to do, just like people go out and choose to still commit crime, but they're going to suffer some consequences. But the interesting thing about the pro-life laws is none of none of them even advocate for women who actually deliberately commit the premeditated homicide to suffer any sort of consequences for it. They just want the co-conspirators. So if they give you the abortion pill, or the person who sells it, or the person who administers it, or the abortion doctor who actually performs abortion, they want the woman to get off pretty scot-free. And I don't actually there's reasons for that, that people say, and I'm not gonna go into it today, but I veer more on the abolitionist side of that argument nowadays. I think women are far more culpable than the pro-life crowd has really given them credit. So it's a shame that Kamala Harris is just going on these friendly places, and Trump doesn't mind going into the lion's den here or there, and he will fight back. He goes to a lot of friendly places too, but he's been on some rocky roads and troubled waters as far as his interviews. But Kamala Harris went onto that podcast because she considered it to be a safe space, and shame on that host for asking such stupid questions. That is a stupid question. But it's repeated, like, tell me a law where, guys, every law basically governs your body. When there's law saying that you can't take heroin, that's a law that's telling you what you can put inside of your body. Okay. But I don't see all these pro-choice people going around saying, "Hey, we need to decriminalize all this stuff." Though Kamala Harris actually, like, at one point did advocate for, I think, the decriminalization of all these hard drugs. There's a position that you haven't heard her say recently, but there's a lot of kooky stuff that she's advocated for. But what really bothers me about all this, though, and Tim Walz is going to say something in one of these Fox interviews that I'm going to play, but but you've heard him say it on the debate stage and so on, that they're pro women and they just want women to be able to do whatever they want with their own bodies, and that's not true because we lived through the COVID era. I recall when, we're not all that young, right? You're old enough to watch a political podcast. So I'm going to assume that you were old enough to remember when Joe Biden, and he was the president, Kamala Harris is still the vice president, right? When Joe Biden got on TV and told us he was losing patience with us, that people needed to be vaccinated, that if you worked in a hospital and stuff, like, you weren't going to be able to have a job. If you worked for the government, you weren't going to be able to have a job if you didn't get the vaccine, that you wouldn't even be able to do business and get contracts with the government if you didn't make your employees get the jab. But he went beyond that, and he decided to make it so that OSHA used OSHA to tell businesses if they had over 100 employees that they had to make them get the jab, or they'd be fined all this money, and they had to keep continuously getting tested, which the companies didn't have to pay for, so that could have came out the pocket of the people who were getting the tests and stuff, to try to break the will of those people. Now, you could still catch the virus and spread it even if you had the jab, so it only made sense that everyone would have to be tested, but the purpose of the tests and stuff was to break down the will of the people and to make them comply. So please do not tell me. I'm so frustrated. I'm so annoyed with the Republicans. I'm annoyed that Trump didn't bring up that point. I'm annoyed that JD Vance didn't bring up that point. And when I meet a politician who is running, a Republican who's running for office, I tell them this. Like, I met with Mike Rogers last week, I think it was, or the week before, and I said I would not even entertain the abortion issue. Like, you got to talk about it a little bit, but I would pivot the crap out of it. I would not be sending out mailers saying my approach. He didn't do this, Trump did. Well, my common sense abortion policies, I wouldn't do that. Of course, I wouldn't do that because I think that's immoral, but you should be talking about how they locked up people, how they stole your will, how they just did stupid stuff, constantly stupid stuff. Even though when Trump was president and the very same vaccine he was trying to push out, they're like, oh, I don't know if I'd be trusting the Trump vaccine. But all of a sudden, when they're in charge, they're telling you that you have to take it, and maybe you can enjoy Thanksgiving, and maybe you can enjoy the 4th of July. Maybe you can be with your family. Maybe you can go to work. I didn't forget. And it frustrates me so much. Like, I know that Trump, this part of the lockdowns and stuff happened within his administration, and he'll say it like, I left it up to states, I was to the states. He pressured states too that he thought were opening too fast. So he was not perfect by that during that time by any stretch of the imagination. But we know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were worse. And these same people who are saying you can't tell people what to do with their own bodies, even at the expense of saving someone else's life. That's what it is. That's the argument. Even if someone else were to die, they cannot use your body to preserve their life. So what's up with this, like, vaccine mandate stuff? Because that's, maybe you'll catch it, maybe you won't be asymptomatic, maybe you'll actually get sick enough to die, maybe, most unlikely. But with an abortion, that is a deliberate action to make sure someone dies. So If you were some kind of tyrant spying on your neighbors, which Tim Walz had people spying on their neighbors and turning them in, he had a tip line. He arrested people, arrested women for breaking his edicts, and no one is talking about it. And it drives me crazy. We should not be having all these conversations on abortion and capitulating to their nonsense and their rhetoric and being all passive and boohoo and apologetic. These people are liars. These people are liars, and they don't care about your bodily autonomy. All they care about is killing more babies, because that's what their donors want to do, period. So let me show you some lies here, man. Let me show you some lies. Tim Walz released a video. I haven't even watched this particular video. We're gonna watch it together. But he talked about this on Fox, and they shot him down or corrected him. But then after that, I believe they still put this out about Amber Thurman. You see, Amber Thurman died because she lived in a state with a Trump abortion ban. They keep calling it Trump abortion bans, even though Trump wouldn't have written these bans. They're most of them are not even full bans, and he's got nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it, other than the fact that he appointed some judges that Roe v. Wade did not survive because it was bad law. It was always bad law, and now states got to actually pass laws that protect the lives of children at particular points. And so they keep telling the story about Amber Thurman. This is, again, another example. There's so many things that they could actually talk about Trump. Now maybe not they can't, because they're worse on so many different fronts, but there's a lot of like legitimate things you could complain about this man, right? But all they focus on are these crazy lies, these Trump abortion bans, Amber Thurman. So let's watch this. Hopefully the music doesn't get me dinged.
I was proudly the person responsible for the ending of Roe v. Wade.
Let the individual states make their abortion policy.
22 states are banning abortions.
We've done something on abortion that nobody thought was possible.
Amber Thurman died waiting 18 hours. The report finding her death likely could have been prevented.
There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. How can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography?
Okay, so this is just freaking embarrassing, right? Mr. Bug-eyed at the debate, and JD Vance, I don't know if he didn't know the story. Look at him. Just look at him. Look at him. I don't know if JD Vance didn't know the story about Amber Thurman, and because all he said about it when Walz kept talking about it, I was like, I wish she was here. Amber Thurman died after she sought an abortion. She had to leave her state to go to another state where she could have an abortion so she could kill her twins. Okay? That's what she wanted to do. She wanted to kill her twins. She was given the abortion pill that all these abortion advocates are like, it's so safe. Just send them through the mail, or send them, go pick them up at your local, I don't know, Walgreens or whatever. And just go pick it up and take it. And it's totally fine. You just, you take the first pill and then you go catch your dead baby sitting on the toilet. It's so safe. And they don't really want to have conversations about how painful it is, side effects, and so on. Well, one of the side effects of this pill is sepsis. That's what Amber Thurman got after she killed her twins with the abortion pill. She got sepsis, and she wasn't properly treated. But that had nothing to do with pro-life laws. It had nothing to do with Trump's abortion bans. And by this time, crazy googly eyes here has to know the truth. By this time, I'm assuming Kamala Harris knows the truth too. They just don't care about it. They will gladly stand on the corpses of women in order to stack more corpses of babies. So if she was from Minnesota, I don't know why. I don't know why these doctors waited so long to treat her after she got the sepsis. And that's why her doctors are suing. I mean, her lawyers are suing. Her family is suing, rather, because there's some medical malpractice there. But it has nothing to do with the laws, and the family didn't allege that, and her lawyers aren't alleging that either. It's just Kamala Harris and googly-eyed Tim Walz that are trying to play on people's emotions with this particular story that could easily be just debunked if you just look into it a little bit. Now, there was a website that phrased it a particular way to try to, I'm sure, get this political result. But they're grown adults. They're running this campaign. People are running their website. They know the truth. They know the truth by now. There's no way to not know the truth. And I'm surprised that JD Benson said anything about it. I hated his segment on abortion during the debate. That's probably his only like real L, in my opinion, was how that segment was handled. But I wish he would have just fact checked him. Now, when Tim Walz went on Fox, they did fact check him about that. But to still cut a commercial and think your googly eyes it's good to put in an ad with those lies is crazy. They don't respect their voters. They don't respect the American people. They don't respect this woman who died because they cannot even be honest about what happened. No respect. Again, because their donors, the likes of Planned Parenthood, etc., want to be able to keep business booming. And I think it's deeper than that. I think it's, it's almost religious. Like Rush Limbaugh would say that liberalism is a religion and abortion is their sacrament. And maybe there's a lot of truth to that. It's got to be beyond money. It's just a ideological thing, and it's a shame because when people want babies, it's like it's a baby when you want it. Like, oh my gosh. They look at the people were talking about Eminem because his daughter was pregnant, so people were congratulating him on being a grandpa, But if someone doesn't want that baby, it's just it's just a choice. But gosh, these people are sick. Someone said, AC said, we need Rush more than ever. We do. I wonder what Rush would say about a lot of this stuff. I feel like if Rush was still around, I think he would maybe explain and excuse a lot of Trump's move to the left. But I don't think he would have gone as far as he probably has on some issues. But yeah, I wish he was still here. I don't feel like anybody quite filled his shoes, and I don't know if those shoes can be filled. He changed so much just in the game. He really did. Now Shannon pressed him on the abortion law in his state, and let me just watch this clip because this might have both of them in there. I'll show you guys this one. Kudos for him to going on Fox, but they obviously the strategy of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz was to hide because they didn't even have an interview until 40 days, and it was a joint interview together. And so now they're doing stuff. And the reason why they have to do stuff, I think it's because their name ID is probably still low. Trump has incredible name ID, obviously, and he was already the president, right? There's a lot of people who don't know anything about Kamala Harris, doesn't matter that she's the vice president, she was largely hidden a lot of the Biden administration. I think, they would trot her out every so often and then try to revamp her, but she just wasn't popular. She just wasn't good at her job. She just couldn't articulate things well. She didn't interview well. And I say that Biden at times set her up to fail. I think, putting her as a border czar was setting her up to fail in other stuff like that. So, people just don't know her very well. Now I've had my eye on her for a minute, and I dislike her so much. I dislike her so much. But there's a lot of things that she said in her past or things that she did that's very easy to find from 2020 where she doesn't look that great and she hasn't been that visible in the past couple of years, and especially on this campaign trail. So she's, at the end of the day, a lot of people, even though they may not like Trump, they will go with the devil that they know. People are betting that people will say, no, you still don't want Trump and you hate him so much, or just you would literally vote for anybody besides Trump, right? Even like Ronald McDonald. I used to hear people say, like, I'd rather vote for Ronald McDonald than George W. Bush or something. It's like, well, that's silly because he's a mascot of McDonald. Like, there are you may not like a choice, but that doesn't mean that there aren't choices that would be worse than the one presented. So they're hoping that people will just be so enamored with their hatred of Trump that they will just go ahead and support anybody. So Kamala Harris is the anybody, but people will support the devil they know over than a devil that they don't. And when they think back on how life was years ago, they're like, you know what, there was more money in my pocket. And it kind of seemed like, I don't know how much the world respected us, but they thought we were a little crazy. So if they thought we were a little crazy, they weren't trying nothing though, right? So people were just kind of think like, I think I'd rather risk it because I don't know about this same administration going and giving me another 4 years. Like, let's go back in reverse, So unless Kamala Harris can really present that she's going to bring something new to the table, she seems to be running in trouble. All the joy is kind of pumped out. Joy isn't enough. Now, that's enough for a lot of people. It's enough for some people, and the base is going to go up, but not their whole base. They're going to have base sitting at home, just like Trump will have base sitting at home. Don't like some of the moves he's made or whatever, but the war for the middle, the war for some kind of normalcy, it looks like Trump is pulling ahead there. Because if he wasn't, then Kamala wouldn't be like, oh, let me have another debate. And she wouldn't be like, oh, let me do some interviews now. Because they were hiding before. And if they could get away with hiding, she's not good at interviews. There's some people who are like, no, she should do more. She's good at the interviews. She's not good at these interviews. She's so bad at these interviews that the Trump campaign decided to they said our new ad just dropped, and all they did was post an entire interview of Kamala Harris. No edits. They just posted an entire interview because it was that bad. It took her like 4 minutes to answer a question. If you could even say that she answered the question. So she's not good at this, and they'd rather not go and do media. They'd rather not, but they have to. They have to. So I don't want to necessarily give him kudos for going on Fox News, but but he's here.
I want to clarify what the law is there in Minnesota. Abortion Finder, a website that helps women find access, says abortion is legal throughout pregnancy in Minnesota. There is no ban or limit on abortion in Minnesota based on how far along in a pregnancy you are. You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that
this
law
is a
goes
woman's
far beyond
right
Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion.
But wait,
let's
agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I just wanted to clear. My sister was, I could hear her next door yelling, "Thank you." Roe v. Wade, under Roe v. Wade, it did have a framework of the trimesters, the first, the second, and the third. And it allowed states to limit abortion, but they don't have to limit abortion. So yes, you can still allow abortion through all 9 months under Roe v. Wade. And under Roe v. Wade, there have been doctors for decades that have been doing late-term abortions, not for just some super tragic situations, but there have been doctors who've had healthy women with healthy pregnancies abort healthy, viable fetuses. So I just want to put it out there because I don't think that's true. I mean that what Shannon is saying, or at least it's not clear. I don't know why they framed it that way. Roe v. Wade, Donald Trump said that Roe v. Wade allows late-term abortions when he debated Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris said that's not true. She was lying. He was telling the truth in that instance. And these Democrats who keep saying Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade will restore Roe v. Wade. Okay, well, Roe v. Wade allows 9-month abortions. This Minnesota law that he has would just think about it, because he signed this radical law in Minnesota. If Roe v. Wade didn't allow 9-month abortions, why would they be supporting Roe v. Wade? When these Democrats have decided to support and sign laws that allow abortions up until like the final month or whatever, at least after viability. So think about that. Think about that. So anyway, let's keep watching.
With the woman and her healthcare providers. The situation we have is when you don't have the ability of healthcare providers to provide that, that's where you end up with a situation like Amanda Zaworski in Texas, where they are afraid to do what's necessary. This doesn't change anything. It puts the decision back on to the woman, to the physicians, and we know that this is simply something to be brought up to be very clear. Donald Trump's asking for a nationwide abortion ban.
Wait, he
and
has
again,
said that
we don't see this
he
as a
said
winning
repeatedly
campaign.
that he will not sign a national abortion ban. Are you calling that just, it's a flat out lie?
Yes, of course. And Senator Vance has in the past said so too. Now, look, they may see this as an election issue. We see it as a right of women to make their own bodily decisions. And that's what the states like my state have the ability to put that in. States like Georgia force women to cross the border, and then we have a death of Amber Thurman. So let's be very clear. Trying to cut hairs on an issue on this is not where the American public's at. They want the restoration of Roe versus Wade. Vice President Harris said she would sign it. That's what we'll do when we're elected.
But to be clear, the Minnesota law is far beyond Roe v. Wade. And about the Amber Thurman case in Georgia, her family has, and it's tragic, she is a young mother who left behind a young son. But what her family has said is it was a complication from an abortion pill that she received. And she didn't get proper care when she went to a Georgia hospital, which had multiple opportunities to intervene there. Her own attorney, the family's attorney, says it wasn't the Georgia law, it was the hospitals. What he claims is malpractice, not treating her when she clearly showed up in distress and still had the byproducts of her pregnancy because of that rare complication from the abortion pill. So just to be clear on the Georgia law and how her family and her attorney sees it.
So I think her attorney is Ben Crump, who has done a lot of these cases involving other Black people. And so I'm sure they're gonna make it much about race and so on. But why would they blame? I mean, it's not the law, the pro-life law, but they would definitely want to go after the hospitals, and they definitely have the right to go after the hospitals if there's multiple opportunities for them to have been able to save her life. But it wasn't the law. It absolutely wasn't the law. And so Secular Pro-Life actually put up this out today. That lawsuit alleges doctors who delayed emergency abortion to blame for Georgia woman's death. And but where it's highlighted here, but Crump blamed doctors, not the law, for Thurman's death. Even under Georgia law, the doctors had a duty to act to save Amber. That's true too. So there's two things to really consider here with this Amber Thurman case, is that one, well, beyond the fact that she got sepsis from a complication from the abortion pill, under the pro-life law in Georgia, there's nothing in there that says that you can't remove your deceased children from your womb, that you can't remove corpses after the children have passed. There's no law that says that. So there's no conflict of the law there. But even if these were babies who were alive, that if she were dying, every single pro-life law in this country allows for the life to be saved. And you don't have to be like bleeding on the table or anything like that. And if there's been situations, it's been cleared up by the Supreme Court, etc., including in Texas. So by all accounts, the hospital screwed up here. The hospital screwed up. And instead of now Crump is going to go and fight them and blame the hospitals and probably get this family a lot of money. But Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are kind of screwing with this family here, and them getting justice and them getting their compensation. Like, I don't think it's going to legally interfere with people actually being in the courtroom and so on. But they're saying this hospital screwed up. It's malpractice. And Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going around saying it's Donald Trump's fault. It's the pro-life law bans. It's their fault. Not only are they totally wrong, they don't actually care about this family getting some kind of justice and compensation for what happened. All they care about is taking down Donald Trump. It's sick. It's sick. Okay? So she had reamed him more about, really questioned him about his law. But we'll move on. But he did go on Fox. Now, here's a segment from Kamala Harris on 60 Minutes. And it's rough. It's just rough.
My plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class, and you strengthen America's economy. Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy.
But pardon me, Madam Vice President, the question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes. It is not right that teachers and nurses and firefighters are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires and the biggest corporations. And I plan on making that fair.
But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
You know, when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about because their constituents know exactly what I'm talking about. Their constituents are those firefighters and teachers and nurses.
Blah, 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 blah. Now, Kamala Harris was asked about this before. By the way, the whole idea, like, they got to pay their fair share. People have to pay like more than 50% of their income if they're super rich. Even if you confiscated all these people's wealth, it wouldn't pay for all the garbage that you want to pay for. You know, it wouldn't do it. Like there's all these other countries that pay for people's healthcare and education, all that other kind of stuff. But the they don't have the sort of money that we spend on like military and other kinds of innovations, other stuff that we do here. But also, their whole like population is taxed high. Like we have a very progressive tax rate. So how is more money of someone that belongs to someone else and not to you, than them paying more than 50%, them not paying their fair share, and they need to pay more? And people talk about corporations as if they're so evil. Some of them are. Depends what their end goals are and who's the CEO and what kind of havoc they're wreaking in the world. But just in general, businesses, you know, that give people jobs and opportunities and allow them to take care of their families and so on are not a bad thing. Like you talk about a corporation, you might have a corporation as you might be employing people. Maybe it's a handful of folks, and maybe it's not a big group yet, but don't you have dreams and goals and aspirations? Like we talk about these corporations as if they're just from the pits of hell. And like what, as if what she's doing is so noble. Like these, you know, people who have supplied jobs know how to supply jobs. What they do is incredible. But Kamala Harris was asked this question about basically how she'd be able to manage all the stuff that she wants to do. Because at the end of the day, how's she going to get this stuff passed? It's a good question. So I think I played this guy for you guys before, but let me play this for you guys again, because she doesn't have an answer to how she's going to actually get the money. Because if she has a divided government, she doesn't have an answer for how she's going to get stuff passed.
Expanding that child tax credit, or you mentioned housing before, giving that extra money for a first home. If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to raise.
Look at the confusion on her face.
Taxes. Well, but we're going to have to raise.
Look forward with those plans and borrow.
Well,
you've never thought about this before? What if you can't just bat your eyes and get your way, Kamala? What if you can't just do that?
But we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to raise. We're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share. I am not mad at anyone for achieving success, but everyone should pay their fair share. And it is not right that the teachers and the firefighters that I meet every day across our country are paying a higher tax than the richest people in our country.
This is so funny because when they talk about getting rid of Trump's tax cuts, you know, they don't seem to want to keep the salt tax stuff that he had in place that actually made a lot of more people pay. Like, because Ben Shapiro, when he's still in California, he's like, these tax cuts are great, but I'm actually paying more because of this. So there are things that they could do to try to get their folks to pay. I wonder how many conversations she has with the Soros kids when she or Tim Walz goes to visit them, you know, because they have a lot of money. Obviously, they pour in a lot of money into their different advocacy groups and fund a lot of horrible stuff. You want to talk about evil corporations and evil businesses and stuff. They're intertwined with that. They're intertwined with that so much, but they just want to take. And again, if it's not your money, what is a fair share of something that you didn't earn? So you can take the money and waste it on nonsense. There's another dumb thing that she said on the podcast, the Call Me Daddy podcast. And someone called her out, was like, she doesn't seem to know what a tax deduction is. Because she keeps saying this particular line about how you can't start a small business with $5,000.
Which is why another thing that I'm really focused on is small businesses and startups, and giving startups a $50,000 tax deduction, because right now it's $5,000 and you can't start up any small business with $5,000. Which is why another
So if it's a tax deduction, and she says it's a $5,000 tax deduction right now, what does that have to do with startups? Like, because you'd still need capital to start. First of all, you can start a business with $5,000. It just kind of depends what you need. But you could, what do you need? You got to pay to get it registered in the state. Probably something federally registered in there. You got to pay to get some kind of OSHA certificate. You got to hang for your one employee or something. It's, and you kind of get to work, like you might have to, depending on what you do, You might need to buy some supplies and get to making stuff. You might need to buy your business cards and make a website, which if you do it on Wix or something, you might not cost you much at all. Maybe just if you know how to do it yourself. I learned how to do a lot of things myself. So because it costs to pay other people. So, I became very self-sufficient in a lot of things that I do. So this idea, she keeps saying you can't start a business with $5,000. Sure you can. Sure you can. A lot of people have, a lot of people do, but the tax deductions would apply after you spent the money, and you would get that stuff deducted on the taxes that you would pay. So what does it have to do with the startups? So she keeps repeating this, and people are like, does she know what she's even talking about? Does she even know what she's proposing? And maybe she doesn't. Someone said, and I'm reading these comments, someone said, someone please ask her to explain the difference between a tax deduction and a tax credit. Someone should. The suburban mom said the 50,000 tax deduction doesn't even kick in until those businesses make the 50,000. So they need to finance everything, wait however long before turning a profit, then claim the 50,000. Who knows if it will even be available by then? Most new businesses lose money in their first year of operations. That is true. So a 50,000 tax credit is meaningless. If I lose I think section rather, if I lose 15,000 in my first year, my taxes will be zero. If I can deduct another 50,000, my taxes will still be zero. She's an idiot. Not only does she not understand her own policy, she's also wrong on her 5K observation. You can absolutely start a business with 5K as a solo freelancer. Also, although there won't be many freelancers left after she imposes the PRO Act, which snuffs out independent contractors. Yeah, a lot of folks aren't really talking about that too much, but yeah, she doesn't, it just, kind of amazes me, this person who doesn't know about job creation. You have someone who's employed a lot of people, created a lot of businesses, and people say, well, Trump went bankrupt with Trump wine and Trump this and Trump that. I'm like, okay, well, he's had like 6 subsidiaries, perhaps more, that have gone bankrupt, and he's has like 800 plus or something, or 600 or something like that. So, he's overall done very well. People could see his name on buildings, and he had his TV shows and stuff. Like, people understand that, it's going to be hard to convince people that Trump is not successful. Yes, there are billionaires and other people who have more money than he has, and so on. But he generally tends to know business, and not just business, his like entertainment sense of shots and all that stuff. He's just, so involved in the media. It just, his mind is always going. It's kind of fascinating to how he understands the visuals of everything. Which, is kind of sucks sometimes for when you see political things that don't make sense. But anyway, he's also a real estate mogul. And so she's saying all the stuff about expensive houses and how people can afford stuff. It's like, sure, but should we trust the administration where all this kind of sucks right now? Or should we, I don't know, trust the guy who knows a little thing or two about real estate? It's just remarkable between the two of them that people would choose her in a crisis, which many people feel like we're in a crisis globally, with our economics, with our I don't know, the situation with Ukraine and Russia and Middle East and so on. Like, we don't need amateur hour, man. We don't need amateur hour. My sister said Kamala has fairy tale talking points. We're just gonna do it, guys. We're just gonna raise the tax. We have to. We have to. We're gonna go before the Senate, and we're just gonna clap really hard. We're gonna clap, and we're gonna make a wish. We're gonna get some birthday cakes, and we're gonna blow out some candles. And we're gonna keep blowing out candles until they just agree to tax the billionaires everything they got. It's silly. I know, I do think it's a shame that we hardly ever on either side of the aisle nowadays talk about really cutting spending, but it is what it is, I guess, right now. Um, I do want to talk about FEMA before I let you guys go. So Kamala Harris announced that they were giving out $750 for immediate assistance for, like, groceries and whatever for the victims of Helene. Mostly, like, North Carolina is just like devastated. Um People were upset because they're like, we need more than that. And then they're come to money that's been sent to Ukraine and other places. Kamala Harris's Twitter page put something up about Lebanon and the people there, and folks are just like, are you totally tone deaf right now? So folks have been upset. Now there's more aid that people will get besides 750, and they'll do more to help build and so on. But I am seeing people on TikTok and other places claim that they are being denied because you still have to apply. And some people don't even have internet or phones or whatever, everything's down. And so I saw a video of one woman. So she said the hotels are just outrageously expensive. She called it price gouging, but at that, people need hotels. I'm not surprised that the prices jump up because it's just demand, right? But they can barely afford to pay the hotels, and the 750 wouldn't cover the hotels for 2 nights if they cost $400 a night. So that's one reason why people are like, 750 for immediate relief right now. Just think about the price of groceries are expensive. But beyond that, I mean, there's more things that people need than just groceries. People have lost everything. And I believe it's per household, not even like per person. But people are saying they are being denied. Now, that's what people are saying. Now, there's a lot of stuff online that people are saying, and that's misinformation stuff that's going around. But it's not enough for folks right now, and they do need a lot of help. There's groups like the Samaritan's Purse that's going out there trying to help and so on. People are saying give to them, not the Red Cross and stuff, but and some of these other organizations. But Samaritan's Purse does good work, and my heart goes out to all these people. Like, I know people who have family and stuff that have been impacted in the storm. I know people who have property and other stuff that's been impacted, and of course there's another hurricane on the way. But what's really upsetting people is the amount of money that has been spent on illegal aliens, or I guess we call them migrants nowadays to be more PC. But when they came over here, and housing them and giving them cards and so on to ease the burden from local authorities and giving them that FEMA money. And now you have Mayorkas, who before said that we are funded and is now saying, now we're out of money, guys. So it's a little messed up. Now you could say, well, that money is kind of is allocated differently. So it's still FEMA money, but it's from a different pot. Okay, sure, I guess. But why don't we have more money dedicated to the pot of Americans who need this money? Like, why do people pay their federal dollars? Do you think they pay their federal taxes? I mean, if they had a choice, perhaps they wouldn't do that, as they're like hunting down people to pay and knocking on their doors and so on, and monitoring your Cash App and so on, et cetera, to make sure you give the amount owed. Do you think people pay those taxes begrudgingly so they can instead house the people who've illegally crossed the border, to make sure that they're put up in good hotels, or that the government cuts some kind of deal with some organization so they can have these rental properties for them, or give them these cards with all this cash and this money for them? Or do you think that they're like, oh, let this money for FEMA be ready, so when there's some kind of disaster, that they can make sure that there's food and water and a place for folks to lay their head? Don't you think that's what folks expect this money to go toward? And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be money allocated some way somehow for, I don't know, or some kind of help to ease the local folks. But the problem with like New York and these other places, the one reason why they start shipping all those folks there is because they were sanctuary cities and so on, and they kept encouraging the illegal immigration. So you had Texas and Florida and other folks who started shipping people and was like, okay, you're gonna share some of this responsibility. And then they were like, oh gosh, this is kind of a bad idea. And we can't take it. No, the country can't take it as a whole. So if we did something, because some folks are complaining because Trump years ago, which Trump has not been president the past 4 years, took some FEMA money or whatever, or tried to like use it for the wall and whatnot. Well, if we actually did have some border security, wouldn't we be spending less on the people who came here illegally? So our border security, of course, is important, domestic policy, and it's important because I guess it's important foreign policy too, because folks come in from all over, including in terrorist regions and stuff, and there's no telling how many terrorists are in our country, and how many people here just mean us harm, and how many people are going to take advantage of us, and how many criminals are here, and etc. But the media would rather cover how people can't properly pronounce Kamala Harris's name right. So we just live in a freaking crazy time. It's insane. It's insane. And people should not trust that Kamala Harris is going to be able to solve these problems, because this is the same person who would virtue signal and say that ICE was basically like the KKK, or people saw them as the KKK. And we need to understand how people can draw that distinction, or draw those comparisons rather. So she's not going to solve these problems. She's part of the problem. She's a part of the problem. And a lot of these problems are done on purpose. I mentioned Soros. They're all in cahoots. I'm not saying that he funds these people for a reason. He funds them for a reason. So they're into some bad open border stuff. And they're not going to act right. They're not. They are not. Something else that's interesting though, Joe Biden. Do y'all remember when he put on that Trump hat? He was talking to somebody and he just he was wearing a hat already, but he put the Trump hat over his head. And that's one reason why these people don't think Trump is as awful as they claim. Because if I thought Trump was someone who was like pro neo-Nazi, pro white supremacist, was a real threat to democracy, was going to destroy our country, blah, 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 there's no way on God's green earth I would pick up the MAGA hat and put it on my head, unless I was like a character in a movie or something. Like, it'd have to be a work of fiction. No way would I be the president of the United States and put on something that was basically a swastika or something. A symbol of the far right craziness. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? And I'm just not going to blame it on him being senile. Trump isn't as bad as they claim. And maybe he's signaling something there. And maybe he's signaling something here now. Because Joe Biden, Kamala Harris continuously keeps trying to, she wants like I'm vice president, therefore I have the ability, I have the experience, etc., to do the job. Which you would think that would be the case. But it's not hers. Right? So, but at the same time, she doesn't want to be glued to the current administration and the policies that have led to, the disaster in Afghanistan, or the economic situation right now. So she's been trying to really distance herself while still, being the girl boss of the moment, because she's a vice president. Well, Joe Biden, he keeps playing games with her. So people noted that he kind of like interrupted her when she was like on stage. So Greg Price said, so Kamala was speaking in Michigan just now, and Joe Biden decided to counter program her by going to the White House briefing room for the first time as president and talk about how she was a major player in all the horrible things he's done. This is funny. This is funny to me. Like, he's not going to say something that's particularly funny, but this whole situation is funny.
There have obviously been a number of crises that the country has been facing over the past several days, with the hurricane, with the port strike, with the situation in the Middle East. Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass. And so she's been, and her staff is interlocked with mine in terms of all the things we're doing.
There have obviously been
Now this is funny for a couple of different reasons. Now, he's correct that there's certain legislation that Kamala Harris is the reason why stuff was passed, especially because she was a tie-breaking vote on like the Inflation Reduction Act, which wasn't really something that was meant to reduce inflation, which Joe Biden at once, he actually said, I wish we would have just called it what it was. And he admitted that it was just basically a Green New Deal thing. Okay, so he's been dropping out hints here and there of just disrupting the message, disrupting, and saying all the quiet parts out loud. And, he hasn't gone out there and said, MAGA, 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 like vote for Donald Trump or something. And I don't, who knows that maybe that's coming? I don't know. But this man is petty. They put this man out to pasture. I mean, he's still the president, kind of, and and they let him keep his job. They didn't do that 25th. There's a rumor, which Trump spoke about the rumor, but I had heard the rumor before Trump said anything, and I wish someone would just like flat out ask. But the rumor was that they told Joe, like, hey, Kamala's on board for the 25th Amendment if he didn't step aside, so that they pushed him out, because this old man was determined to keep going after the debate, and he crashed and burned. And even with the donors saying that we're not going to raise any money we're just going to focus on the House and the Senate and so on, even in the face of all that opposition, they didn't want to do anything because Hunter, probably because also the situation with the son, Jill seems like she really, 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 really likes power. And he probably didn't want to give it up either. Okay. So they forced this man out via an announcement on Twitter, and he's probably not happy about it. Now, he's gone around and campaigned for Kamala, sure, but I think the truth is that he's upset, and Joe Biden is bitter to the bone. So maybe he's doing things to undercut her. Now, sometimes when you get old, really old, he's really old, guys, you just say things and you don't have quite that filter anymore. So maybe that's why he's saying like, the Inflation Reduction Act wasn't really about reducing inflation. It's just, Green New Deal stuff. Maybe him saying like, she's lockstep with me, etc. Blah blah blah. She's clearly trying to distance herself from him, and he's not allowing her to do that. And again, she did help get some of these bills passed with the tie-breaking vote. But as far as them being lockstep, her people, I think she's hired on the same people or similar people who are working on his campaign. So maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. But the truth is that there's been all this infighting with Kamala's team, and there's been rumors and reports of disruption between her staff and his staff, and she's had a high turnover rate. They kept putting her on the back burner. I was pretty sure and pretty convinced when they decided to make her the border czar that they were setting her up to fail, because someone needed to do something about the border. They made it to look like someone was doing something, but obviously it's a really big task, and she wasn't equipped to do all the things. He could have signed some executive orders and basically restored things that Trump did, and it would have made life a lot better, but he didn't want to do that. So he pointed to Kamala and was like, she's the border czar, she's doing this. SNL even did a skit at the time, kind of mocking like, oh, thanks, Joe, that's a totally reasonable ask. Totally reasonable request. People saw it was just kind of too big for her. So I think they were setting her up to fail. I don't think his team cared for her that much. And by the way, I wouldn't care for her too much after she basically accused me of trying to keep her from integrating in schools, because you're basically calling him a racist. Even though she said Joe Biden's not a racist, but like there's a quote from Ned Stark. Game of Thrones, like everything that follows word but is bleep or whatever. So she's basically trying to throw him under the bus, call him as racist so she could derail him, when she was trying to run in 2020, and then basically told Colbert that she did it because she wanted to, they were at a debate, anything goes. She could say anything because it was a debate, anything to get elected, anything to assume power. I wouldn't have forgot that. I thought it was so remarkable that he asked her to be the vice president. I thought he wanted a black woman. And there were other women that I thought would have been better because she had a lot of baggage, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that the other candidates would have been good, but they would have had less baggage than her and been less controversial. Because now we see that there's a lot of things that she's trying to just kind of forget about. We have a lot of tape. We have her voting record, so on. Like she tried to say that I'm not going to tell you what kind of car you can drive. And I'm like, ma'am, your name is on a bill for EV mandates. What do you mean you're not going to tell people what to drive? This is what you actually supported and tried to push into legislation. You're just a liar. You're just a liar. So I think he kind of would love to see her fail and maybe see all these people fail. Because at the end of the day, you don't think that Trump is the worst thing in the world if you're willing to put a MAGA hat on. No way. No freaking way. No way. No way. They say whatever they can to attain power, to get elected or whatever, but they don't think this dude is literally Hitler or kind of like Hitler in the least bit. But Kamala did him dirty, and Obama and them, everybody who was a part of it, did him dirty. Now he shouldn't have ran again. That's on him, and they should have had a proper primary. But really, he should have stepped aside, and that's his fault. That's his fault. But he's petty to the bone. Petty to the bone. The high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas, Joe Biden did that. Joe Biden was part of that. So he's got nasty in him, man. He's got nasty in him. And he's doing it real sly. But that's my theory. That he kind of wants her to fail. And maybe not even kind of. Like, he wants her to fail. I'm not saying he's going to come out on the campaign trail and endorse Trump or anything like that. I don't think you'll see anything in that regard, but I don't think he's going to lose sleep over it. I think he'll still get his 20 hours in. I think he'll still get his 20 hours in. Last thing, because we are 22 minutes over. Wow. I want to mention before I let you go, it is the anniversary of October the 7th. And that was such a obviously terrible day. What the Israeli people suffered and what they had to suffer afterward was awful and traumatic. And I will say that I think if you're not a Zionist after October 7th, then I don't know what to do with you, I guess. I mean, if you're opposed to them having their own homeland, I guess you wouldn't be a Zionist. But the argument for, and there's a lot of people who don't know what Zionist means, but basically that they should have their own homeland and their own country in their homeland and stuff. And the way people reacted to them, like, this was a terrible thing, yet you had people immediately say that it was their fault and blame them. You had folks who said, what was his name? Norman Finkelstein, who wrote a piece about how it warmed his heart. You had the Harvard kids who wrote that that were part of all those different groups who signed that letter, basically still blaming them, for October the 7th. There were rallies and stuff that were in Michigan, that were like, oh, we don't support the violence, but, still kind of their fault because of occupation and so on. And then there were memes and there were t-shirts and BLM and solidarity with, the paragliders and the people who did the violence, and the media paying, terrorist journalists who went in to help kidnap people that day. There's just so much ugliness and misinformation, and the way that folks treated Israel after they retaliated. When I know that in the US, if something that scale happened to the US, we just would not entertain people lecturing us about how we achieve some kind of justice. And Israel, Gaza is a very densely populated area. So you're going to have casualties, but the ratio to which, civilians were killed compared to, bombs dropped and the terrorists who they went after, they handled their operations and their missions much more humanely than the US and other groups. And there was a thread that we went through some months ago that really broke down those numbers. And it still just kind of wasn't enough for folks. And you saw the Biden administration trying to capitulate to different groups and sects who were pro, we'll say pro-Palestine, but there were terrorist sympathizers, certainly. And they were undermining Israel's ability to really defend themselves. At one point, they were like, we're going to withhold these weapons that we already allocated funds for if you go forward and do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, Kamala Harris saying you can't go into Rafah. We've seen the maps, and they were hiding hostages there. You have people who kept saying, like, we need the ceasefire, we need the ceasefire, we need the ceasefire, we need a deal. But the truth is that, Hamas was ready to do the same thing if they could. And people needed to say, hey, Hamas needs to return the hostages and lay down their arms. And that is what we need to accept as their defeat. Because otherwise we're just asking for more dead Jews later. And even when people were saying that Israel can do more precise things to rescue their people and so on, so they did do this really impressive rescue operation, and people were still angry at the amount of loss that happened. And people were upset about them blowing up Hezbollah. With the beeper operation, when they made the beepers and stuff, made a company to sell them the stuff to the terrorists, and made the beeper and I think the walkies and stuff too. It blew them up. And then when they had to meet together, they blew up more folks. I mean, just doing some really impressive James Bond kind of spy nonsense. And folks still upset. So the reason why I said, why they just got to be Zionist and support, their own state and stuff. Because at the end of the day, they can only really depend on themselves. I mean, you make deals and you have allies and stuff in the U.S. Obviously, people send the money and make contracts and so on. But at the end of the day, you are a sovereign nation. You got to take care of business, because everybody's not gonna back you up when you need them to. So, I don't know what they'll do in the future. When people forget these lessons, when these massacres start to get pretty far removed, I don't know what they'll do. And I just know that people just treated them differently. And people will say, like, have the opposite opinion of, oh, like, people criticize Black people, but you can't criticize the Jews. Like, people have crazy conspiracy theories or whatever that they've circulated around this kind of stuff. But I mean, as far as what the nation has done to try to preserve their people, if the US would not have handled it in such a low casualty sort of way, I think. And we just would not have allowed ourselves to be lectured in the way that people have lectured Israel. It's very strange, and I don't know how much of it is just, burdensome stone prophecy, kind of biblical revelation coming to pass as far as people's attitudes toward Israel, but I know they're probably crossing their fingers for Donald Trump to return to the White House, because Kamala Harris ain't gonna be no better than Joe Biden, and they don't need dudes like Ben Rhodes back in there. I think it's Ben Rhodes who they were calling Hamas. I think that was his nickname. They don't need people in there who want to see Iran, empowered and allow them to basically get to nukes and stuff. They we need we don't need amateur hour. We don't need amateur hour. And for foreign policy, absolutely between Trump and Kamala, even if it was still Trump and Biden, absolutely we'd want Trump back in rather than Kamala. And I'm sure there's a lot of allies around the world that don't want Kamala in there either. But what really wicked me out about people's attitudes about basically, I don't know, seeming like they deserved it because of their calling them colonizers and so on. I'm like, y'all just call white people in the US colonizers, folks who didn't colonize a darn thing. Not a darn thing. And if those are the sort of attitudes that people have to justify the evils that happened that day to them, I'm like, what would y'all do to your fellow citizen if you had the opportunity? And I guess we could see a little bit of that during the 2020 riots, when people were looting and burning stuff. And, I saw people personally told me like, oh, this is just like acceptable collateral damage. They didn't even care if Black lives are being destroyed by those riots. It was like the cries of the unheard, or the justice of the world, and so on. And a lot of these same people are, anti-Israel and stuff, and they just carry over that same kind of ideology, like colonizers here, the colonizers there, they're the bad people and so on. And again, I'm just like, what would y'all do if y'all really had the opportunity to harm your fellow man, and how you would rationalize it in your mind? So the world is a really dark place. It had it's just been sad to watch, I guess. But kudos on Israel for some of their strikes that they've done as of late, especially with Hezbollah. The beeper stuff. Oh my gosh. We didn't really talk too much about it because that was kind of like happening around the time when I took my hiatus after my mom passed. But they've been killing it, like figuratively, literally, as of late. And they have to do what's best for them, just like the US has to do what's best for us. And you make deals that hopefully are in alliances that are in the best interest of both parties. But obviously we want to do what's best for us. But I think what's best for us is terrorists being defeated in the long run, and people peace through strength, I guess. Peace through strength, not appeasement, certainly. So we'll see what they, at the end of the day, after this is over, how they proceed forward. There's still a lot of people pushing to basically appease the bad behavior. I don't think that's a good move, but they'll certainly continue to get pressured. But I'm glad there's a little engine who could over there. But it's been disturbing, but it's still at this point nice to see them really getting some swift victories with minimal casualties. Anyway, I'm just looking through your comments really quick. Oh gosh. Someone popped in and said some stuff about Trump. I didn't even read this at the time. He said he needs to be taken down. You as a beautiful black lady. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the compliment. Should agree. Trust me, he will turn on you. He's a racist and sexist felon. You know, the felon thing is stupid. His case where he is a felon, you have to the ex guy who's on Fox, he's on CNN now. Gosh, what's his name? Black hair, glasses. I can't think of his name. But he was interviewing Judge Judy about the cases, and she's just like, they used all that money to come after Trump, and as a taxpayer, it's just gross. Like, she didn't use words gross, but you know, she basically was just a waste of time nonsense. They had to twist themselves into a pretzel to even get the result that they wanted, to even explain what kind of crime that he did. So calling Trump a felon is silly. Saying he's sexist, he's given a lot of opportunities to women. He's a equal opportunist as far as like attacking male, female, whatever. You know, does he have, you know, I don't love all the ways that he treats women and stuff though, like as far as respectfully, but you know, I don't like Kamala either. Like, if you're going the character thing, like we could play tit for tat for that, sure. I think, but at the end of the day, if you want to talk about people who actually did stuff, it's like personally, like he's gonna turn on you. The Biden-Harris administration actually did things that were harmful directly to me and my family. Okay? So you tell me to be upset because Trump might turn on me one day? When Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were out here doing their unconstitutional OSHA mandates and stuff? We had to worry about who's going to keep their job? Like, go kick rocks. Go kick rocks. Seriously. Thank you for the comment though, and the compliment, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. Yeah, if you're talking about personal vendettas, I got plenty of grievances to air with Biden and Kamala. Certainly. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content, website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost to stream and run my site, all that good stuff. So you guys can. I very, very, very much do appreciate it. I didn't mention anything about super chats, but if you're watching this back later, if you want to send a gift on YouTube, you guys can do thank yous, and you guys can do stars if you're on Facebook. But the best way to give is to directly go to the website. You guys can also check out different merch that's available there, like different mugs and so on, like black tea mug and so on. You guys can check out some of my books. I have a link in the description that'll take you to an Amazon page that has all my books there. So that's the easiest way to find my stuff. Otherwise, you guys can just search my name on Amazon, Christina L. Barr. And I have, background here with some of my stuff. Behind me here, some of my titles. I have fiction and nonfiction. Most of my books are fiction. But go ahead and just check out my stuff. And I really do appreciate you guys joining me live here today. And I will see you tomorrow. God bless.